Hi, everyone. For those of you who don't know me, I am Colleen, and I have been working in the social work. I've been working in the field of ABI recovery for approximately, I don't know, 20 years or so. And I'm really excited. I haven't always been in the worked as a social worker. In the last 5 or 6 years, I've been working strictly as a social worker, and I'm really excited to bring information about EMDR to you today because in the as I've been working with individuals, I find working with them to build strategies to manage some of the outcomes of what they're dealing with, some of the emotional heaviness that comes along with a really poignant change in their life, significant changes. So, and that's really can be disorienting and really hard to adapt to. And there's a lot of trauma associated with that. And in the past, I feel as though I've mainly been able to support people to put strategies in place to manage that trauma. But for the first time, I feel like EMDR, I'm learning more about these therapies like EMDR that actually release some of that trauma. And yeah, so I just wanted to bring this to you and see if any pieces of it resonate with you. And it may be something you want to investigate out there in the world after this presentation. And so EMDR was originally spoken about as a therapy by Francine Shapiro. She was apparently out walking on a path and she had a lot of things, when we walk, a lot of things running through her head. And she was looking back and forth from side to side of the path that she was walking on and found that some of her feelings were releasing and it didn't feel as heavy and it didn't feel as much. And she wondered if there was something more to this eye movement process in helping to release trauma or to process information so that it can be released more easily. When we go to bed at night and our hypothalamus is processing information from the day, our eyes go back and forth. REM sleep, a lot of you have probably heard about REM sleep. And so EMDR is mimicking that process in therapy to reprocess information that may not have been processed all that well as children for us or during a traumatic event for us, which then leads to our system having to manage those feelings of PTSD or trauma and manage information and stories that we may have picked up as children. So, oh, we go. I just had to figure out how to move it forward there. Every system is a little bit different. So, what I mean by things when we are children is often there can be events that happen that we process from the perspective of a child and not from the perspective of an adult. They find that many children of divorce carry around the idea that they are, this happened because of me, or this happened, it must be a burden, or I must be too much, or maybe I'm not important enough. And those are messages that we know as adults are absolutely not true. And yet there is a piece of our system, according to EMDR, that still carries those messages. If we're involved in a collision and there is this insurance process that follows the collision or the process of not being able to get back to who we were, there's a lot of guilt and a lot of pain that can be associated with that emotionally because of these core beliefs. So this is looking to address some of those as we go through EMDR. So I was going to move this little box so I can see to read. So EMDR combines therapy and eye movements or other types of stimulation. It can be sounds going off, they call clickers. It could be tapping on the legs so that it draws our attention to this back and forth rhythm. That same back and forth rhythm that our eyes fall into in processing while we're sleeping. This allows us to access these traumatic memories, these core beliefs that may be negatively affecting us. They're finding PTSD, individuals managing PTSD, extreme anxiety, mood, and substance use disorders are demonstrating to have relieved trauma, are better able, some of the veterans specifically, they've used it with our veteran population and found some of those individuals are saying, you know what, I can go back and live with my family. I can start to carry on aspects of my prior life before all of this happened. So EMDR is a well researched an effective psychotherapy method. This is what we are learning. Um, there has been more and more. Of course, there is always a split view with research. So, not everything is positively reflected in the research, as is with any therapy, but there is sufficient therapy or research to back up this therapy as an effective way to overcome. And here's the idea you can see visually. When we are walking into a room and carrying these internal messages or overstimulated by the noises and what's happening around us, you can see how the brain is in a state of overactivity, and that's that response mode as opposed to how the reaction mode as opposed to our calculated response mode, which is what we like to, analyze the situation, understand what it is that we need to do to be calm and settled in this environment. That's really difficult for us to do when our brain is in overactivity. Who is EMDR effective for? So I mentioned veterans, but it's just really, it can be advantageous for anyone who is trying to use self-calming strategies and finds that, you know what, it doesn't matter. I can't step away and use those strategies when I most need them. Um, and it's for people who do not aren't plagued with experiences of disassociation. That makes it really difficult to use self-calming and release trauma when we as humans disassociate from our trauma, which is a coping strategy in itself. So EMDR is not as successful with people who are disassociated, but it can be, with a lot of work, effective for them as well. Um, it requires full participation, but not lengthy, long-term participation necessarily. We're finding that it's quite effective quite quickly for a lot of individuals. It provides you an insight into the behaviors and the responses that you have been participating in throughout life. Ones, it's they say that's the definition, I think, of insanity is doing the same things over and over and hoping for different results. So trying to change those behaviors and change those responses becomes attainable when we can lower some of the triggers and some of that excited brain response to things. EMDR is really good for those who want to have changes in their daily achievements. I don't want to do this same routine over and over, day after day. I want to make changes, and EMDR can be a really effective therapy to jumpstart the ability to make changes. Otherwise, it is, yeah, EMDR is great for us to understand how we function, how people around us function. And and why they respond to us in a certain way. And so a lot of what we perceive to be happening, we can now perhaps understand like, oh, that's their responses that don't necessarily have anything to do with me. And it takes a lot of that. It just opens that window into understanding that. It enables us to look back on events from our life and understand, why things happened in a certain way. Um, we can better understand our fears, our resistance to things, our frustrations. Like, why does that upset me so much? Why do I seem to shut down and not be able to move forward into that situation? Um, so it offers effective trauma intervention and trauma release, as I mentioned, and it allows for us to not have to use our coping strategies so much, or to have more effective results from our coping strategies when we need to use them. So just thinking about our lives in general, I know there are a lot of situations in my own life where I seem to have a barrier between myself and what I want based on my fears or my agitation with a situation that then leads me to stepping away from it and not following through, or not having the energy to do it that day and withdrawing from it for those reasons. So when we are not accurately processing information, our feelings of fear and anxiety and perceived threat are really strong. And when we are able to get to that place where we can look at the situation, process it for what it is, as opposed to how we have previously perceived those type of situations, it allows for this more ease of self-motivation and problem solving and social relationship development. I mean, our traumas and our past beliefs can really interfere in our social relationship development. So um, to be able to have accurately processed information and work from that grounded place allows us to have more opportunity for more positive outcomes. An easier time, an easier road to travel. So when we're children, we learn what is safe. We understand what the happy face looks like, what a threatening face looks like. And we learn what noises and what signals mean we're in a safe environment. And sometimes it can be simply as like, the tilt of a head of a person who was not safe for us could start a whole system of response that is not true, because that person, the new person that we're meeting, and when they tilt their head in the same way, may not, they're not necessarily a threat, but our system, our learned system that we pick up as children, very much so tells our body that it is. And this is really important to understand for those individuals, those children that didn't know a very safe environment. There's a lot of us who had, a decent childhood. We understand, there might have been trials and tribulations and challenges, but in general, we know what safe and calm feels like. And so EMDR can be a little bit more challenging for those individuals who did not have that steady message and don't always know what it feels like to be calm and safe. And that's perhaps those are the individuals that are doing that disassociation piece. What is too painful for me to reprocess this or to think about this. My way of coping is just to shut it down and put it over there and ignore it completely. And as we grow older, we do still travel through life, and we seeing, hearing, noticing, whether we're cognizant of it or not, whether we're aware of it or not, there's all these little messages happening, and our system responds to that. Our way of relating to that information coming in, if it's incorrect, if it is on vigilant mode because of things that have happened in our past, or because of a trauma that has more recently happened, such as a collision or an injury that came out of nowhere, was a result of some person's inattention, that leaves us in a feeling of being out of control. So anytime those feelings of lack of control come up, it could set down a whole system response. We tend to get very tight in our chest. Our breathing goes from a nice, relaxed, even breathing to up in our chest so we can be ready to run. Our stomach doesn't work as well. We're distracted. It's very difficult to focus because we're staying on high alert. And then we can become agitated and easily frustrated. And it takes a lot of energy to maintain fight or flight mode. We get tired of doing it. And so here's the general response states. Oh, I didn't want to go there yet. These are the general response states when we're feeling like that. We could freeze up, kind of like the possum does, like it kind of shut down. We can run from it, or get combative and get argumentative, and for self-protection purposes. And one way unique to humans, is to, or mammals really, is to socially connect. And so these are the 3 stages of our vagus system, our nervous system. It's all these nerves that travel throughout our body, responding to seeing things and figuring out what to do with information. So, as a rule, we want to be able to travel up and down that ladder of response as we need to. There are times where we do need to withdraw and rest and regain energy. There are times when it is time to respond, when it is time to move, to get out of there, to respond and advocate for yourself. And sometimes it's just a matter of sharing the fear or sharing the experience with someone else and connecting with them, that you can bring ease to the system. And that's something that is really important to do in our world. However, if we're stuck in that place of hyper response, it's really hard to be able to share because you're so reactive. How do you calm down and just voice what you need from a calm place so that someone else can share that with you and respond to it in a way that's helpful to you? Or we could be the other way. We could just be, this is what I akin to people who are really depressed and spend, it's really hard for them to even get out of bed because they simply don't have the energy. They just need to rest and recover because they've spent an excess amount of time in that sympathetic reactive stage. And their nervous system is done. It just needs to rest. So how do we prepare for EMDR? So if I have clients who will come to me and they learn a little bit about EMDR and they tell me that they want to try this. I want to see if I can get rid of some stuff. And so the first thing I want to work on with them is, okay, if we're going to get in there and stir up some stuff, what are we going to do with it? Excuse me, sorry. What are we going to do with it once we stir it up and it's out of the box? Do you have a strategy in place that works for you for leaving this session safely? Because the last thing I want to do is stir it up and then, see you later, see you in like a week, 2 weeks, and they're moving through their days in an overly agitated state. And there will be some piece of that with EMDR for sure, because it is stirring things up. However, we want to make sure you're able to stabilize and get to a safe place if you need to. So one of the ways we do that is having a container. I, in my mind, use something like a filing cabinet. And as I move through my day and something comes up, I label it. So, if I was in a session and agitated, I could, before leaving that session, go, okay, that's your anxiety in response to this information that you've stirred up, into those memories that you've hit upon. For now, we're going to put them in the drawer. We're going to shut that drawer. And we're going to leave it there until I come back next session. Or you're going to leave it there until you have the energy to deal with it. And I know that's really hard to do. It only happens through repetition. That's why I talk about how important preparation is to have that skill to be able to, yes, those thoughts that start running through the mind and round and round and round, to be able to say, I get it. Those are valid concerns. They're not something that's my anxiety, though, that's focused so much attention on them. I need to put it away. And I may need to do that 15, 20 times in a row, because if there's anything we know about thoughts, they come back to find us repeatedly. And so it's like building a muscle. Getting really good at doing that is really helpful. I often have identified resource maps with people. So, who are your people that do make you feel safe? What are the activities you do that feel really good, that you feel safe? Where can you go? What can you do? Who can you talk to? Um, there's a safe place exercise I like to do, and it's finding in your mind a memory of where you felt really safe and really comforted, so that you can seek that place out, go into that, see the place, feel how calm you are in that place, and bring the system down. Because we start up and we're up here, our nervous system's on end. We want to bring it back down so that we can leave and be safe. And breath work. I really find breath work is effective, either combined with movement, combined with walking, on its own with meditation and mindfulness, because breathing out, you can physically feel your body come down, getting rid of some of that stress. Once I know that someone has established recovery strategies, can use the container, exercise, breathing, whatever they need to calm down, then we start looking at what we want to address. Because a lot of people know, oh, I get agitated in this situation, but they don't necessarily know exactly why. They can't always pinpoint it. So we spend a little bit of time figuring that out. And there's something called a float back exercise that we'll go into, because, and I have the picture of the dandelion on this page, because, we move through life and there's all these little things that pop up like a dandelion on our yard. And, I'm just going to the store and back, and poof, suddenly I'm really agitated. Well, what happened? So, and what is it coming from? So, what's beneath the surface? What is popping up from the deep roots of my experiences or my feelings or the trauma that's in my system? And so you want to look at that. Okay, what is my daily challenge to be addressed? I want to be more comfortable walking into a room full of people and more confident. I don't want to be on edge, quiet, shy, withdrawn because of fears. Okay, so we're going to figure out what the negative cognition is. What's the negative words that go with that when you walk into the room? Is it, I'm not as smart as these people? I'm not as, worthy as these people. I'm not likable. I'm not welcome. And think about, and then we spend some time thinking about where that may have come from. And that's an exercise that people can do during the week between sessions. And I can paper supplies to kind of write things down, star which ones come up the most often, star where you feel it in the body, star what you think the negative cognition is, so we can see which themes are coming up most frequently, and that helps us pinpoint what we want to work on. And then we think about what is the worst that I ever experienced this feeling and these thoughts, and can I remember the first time? And some people can remember all the way back, to kindergarten. I had and further, where I had a young man tell me that he needed to use the bathroom in kindergarten and asked and was refused. There was someone in there, or for whatever reason, he ended up wetting his pants in class. And it was a really negative and experience for him as a child, which as we reprocessed as an adult was able really helped him to be able to say, you know what, I did do enough. I do enough. I am I was worthy. I need, he was able to, and yet oddly, he had carried around that all his life, and he was very uncomfortable in social situations because of that experience. So, and in a different day, that might not have hit him in the same way, or a different person, it might not hit him in the same way. We never know exactly what plants the seed. We just want to root it out and get rid of it so that we're not continuing to feel those things or respond to situations from the perspective of a child or a traumatized individual. Then we think about what's our desired income. So if you have the negative cognition that I'm not good enough, then I want to be able to say, I'm good enough and believe it in that moment, like truly believe that and feel that. So in doing that, we can be thriving instead of just surviving through our days. If we can work from a calm place when we feel this storm of stuff coming in at us, if we can go, no, I'm sorry, that's not true, and calm the system down, or, ideally, not even feel that stuff coming in anymore, being able to just automatically see the situation for what it is and work from a calm place. That's our goal. That's what I'm hoping EMDR therapy can offer people. So we don't have to be in reaction mode. We can actually look at intelligent response mode. So we want to get rid of that inner voice or those inner feelings that have been hurting us, and make sure the words we use automatically are supporting us. And that way we don't have to worry about low energy as much, because our body won't be using as much energy to cope with keeping calm when all those untrue messages or feelings of trauma come up, because they won't be coming up, or they won't be coming up as strongly. So we want to do an assessment. Once we have that information of the different triggers, is what I call them typically. What are the triggers? When do I feel these triggered responses? And then I identify the image that goes with the feeling. Once I figured out the feeling in the body, I try to identify images where I felt that feeling before. So there's a lot of thinking in this preparation assessment stage, and labeling what it is. If I can label it as fear, then I'm like, okay, that's what that is. This might not actually be a threat. This might just be my fear that's gone off. So I can label that. I pop it, it automatically moves to the frontal lobe, gets out of the emotional place, moves to the frontal lobe, and then I can break it down. And I can, again, go through that page of information and identify, the current issues in my world, the worst I felt of it, and the first experience of it, where it lands in my body. A lot of people start to realize, you know what, like, this is in my throat. I've been feeling tightness across my arms and into my shoulders where I feel daily pain. And now some of that's released, and that pain is starting to move. Like, you get movement because it's not getting stopped, and it's not in a tense response anymore. And that is the part of that assessment. We actually give them numbers, and SUD is actually the level of response on a scale of 1 to 10. That is like way up there, and so those are the ones I want to work on first and get rid of. And then we want to be able to have to replace, well, we'll go to that one next. So this is where Francine Shapiro is like, I got this whole book that helps us to understand how to label those things, and how to use that chart, and how to get ready for this whole process, and and to understand what's happening through the processing. So that's and I have at the end, I can give you the links to find those books out there. This one right now, actually, is it that one? Oh no, it's the polyvagal one. Is the next one is free for if anyone did happen to have an Amazon membership. It's free to Amazon members. I listen to it in the as I drive or as I am out walking. I put on my headset and just listen to it. So I can have these messages repeated and understand this theory and how it works better. So once we have all of our triggers identified, which ones are the strongest, have an idea of where they're coming from, have certain images in our mind, we can process them. And it, you can, there's materials that talk about that processing stage as the light is going back and forth, or as the tapping's going back and forth, we're thinking about that image, we're feeling it in our body, we're reprocessing it, and you don't have to talk about it. I will stop and I'll say, what's coming up, and it may be a one-word response like anger or sadness, and that's the active piece of you reprocessing that information. So you can be I guess what I would say is think of it as a movie going by of those past experiences or current experiences that are so upsetting. You're keeping one foot in the present and one foot in the session, and then the rest is you seeing that go by, and we're reprocessing those things until we come to the point where it's no longer, a 10 of upset in thinking about it or in talking about it. You're able to feel calm in thinking about that. And some people say, you know what, it's nothing now. I don't even have any response. It's 0. So that's the ideal. That's where we're headed for. And then we start the installation to replace that with a positive. So, we're getting rid of, that phrase, I'm not lovable. If that no longer causes a 10 response inside your system, or a 7 response, or 6 response inside your system, it means it's down enough that we can install a new cognition. So I am lovable. And then we start to work on installing that belief until we get up to a level of 7. And so that means at a 7 that this really feels real to me. I know there's often times where, part of an exercise of therapy is, looking in the mirror, having that, looking in that mirror and saying, I am worthy. And a lot of people tell me, sure, I can do that, but I don't feel it. So the goal of EMDR is to get rid of the trauma, get rid of those negative cognitions that take up so much space that there isn't room for the positive cognition to land, to be believable. And we don't want to just assume, okay, it's gone. We want to really go through the body scan, really focus on the mind, the body, the breath, and thoughts. So there is a piece of that to make sure that when you think of those situations again, if you think of yourself, even for future, thinking about, okay, tomorrow I'm going to go here. What's coming up? And if you can successfully remain calm and be able to use that positive cognition of, I've got this, I'm smart enough, I'm worthy, I can handle this, then we really know this is working. We really know that, yeah, you know what? This is settling into our system, and it's a place where we can work from now, as opposed to a place of trauma and upset. So I will bring someone back and ask for their feedback, usually after every session, to find out, how did the week go? How are things happening? Are you seeing any changes or movement? And even after we're done, I like people to come back and see, okay, where are you? Like, has this remained intact for you? Have you been able to address new situations from a place that we're not building up those beliefs, those negative beliefs again? So there are studies out there that do talk about its effectiveness, client feedback on them. And I do have a write up, like the text from this PowerPoint, just labeled as in the slides. And there is the corresponding links in it that you could have. I can certainly send it to buyer to be distributed if I think that's how they'll do it. We can check those details after to make sure if you do want it, it is available to you. Yeah, and if you want to look up anything more about EMDR and decide if it's something that might be beneficial for you. The benefits, we've talked a lot about them, but yeah, for me, the benefit is when I see some of my clients say, you know what, I don't feel as upset by imagining myself going into this situation. I do not feel so heavy when I think about some things I did in my life or some experiences I've had. They don't feel so heavy, they don't feel so hard. I do believe that I did everything I could have done in that situation. Those are huge wins because, to date, as I had mentioned, we're often, we often get good at using strategies to manage things, but what if we didn't have to use those strategies all day long, every day? That's what I'm hoping for, so that people can just feel okay when they wake up in the morning, instead of waking up and having to get over this hump of whatever it is they're carrying to be able to move through their day. So that's the goal. Instead of waking in all these heightened areas of stress and fear and uncertainty and feeling unworthy, to be able to drop those away, feel those dropping away, and leaving your house, your bedroom, your house from a place of calm and relaxation, because it makes it a lot easier to achieve things if you can do it from that place. So, is how does EMDR work with people with ABI? Because often, as we talked about, after having something like this happen, we are on vigilance. The system is already exhausted. So this part of the talk is really focused on, what added measures could be put in, and that's where I go back to polyvagal calming, like vagus nervous system calming and toning, so that we aren't in a state of alert, or we aren't in a state of shutdown. We want to build energy in our system to be able to take on new things. And I did mention, for a lot of people will tell me, what, because of my concussion symptoms, my injury symptoms, I can't focus on a ball going back and forth on a screen to reprocess, or it would be an irritant to me to even follow your hand back and forth like that. Which is what will happen in a session in order to get the eyes moving back and forth past the bridge of the nose for reprocessing, like what happens in REM sleep. I can move to tapping, so just gentle tapping on the leg, so that that attention is drawn back and forth, and they're finding that that is an effective method of delivering EMDR as well. There's a lot of tools we can talk about for your system. I have done a talk on polyvagal before in the past. It could very well be out there in the library, in Buyer's library of presentations, if you want to know a little bit more lengthy information. But generally, we want to do active work at calming our system. So education and understanding, building, making sure our calendar has activities on it that make us feel safe and build joy, and lower pain feelings, and that CBT could be part of that. ACT is the acceptance and commitment therapy model, which I talked about a little bit in that presentation. The visualization and breathing. We really want to get our system calm enough that it has the energy available to start processing some other things. I talk about the W's of like, who are the people? What are the activities? What are the little things that make us feel good? For me, every single time a chipmunk makes me laugh. So those are the things I want to take the time to savor and feel those those joyful feelings in my system. Um, where the woods consistently is a place that I just love the smells there. I love the quiet. That is my safe place or my calm place. And people, there are people in my world that I spend more time with now because I'm starting to realize, you know what, when I'm with her, lovely person can do it, but not for very long because their energy is just more agitating to my system. I don't want to necessarily be confronted with some of the negative stories they want to tell. And they're not meaning it to be hurtful. That's where their focus is. And I need my focus to be in a more positive place so that I can feel good. My system can be calmed down. Breath work, as we talked about, there's specific exercises always online, tons of resources online to practice that, anywhere from a minute to 3 minutes. Breathing with movement. Whoops, going the wrong way. So there's breathing. Imagine it coming through your heart and attaching a really positive image to it. So these may be your extra preparatory tools if you want to think about going into doing EMDR one day. And then the extra things that stimulate your system in a good way. So cold exposure. A lot of my clients will tell you that they don't like those sessions where I tell them they have to end their shower with like cool water getting down to cold. That is just such a good lesson for your system. It's able to say, you know what? I don't like the cold. It's not going to hurt me. I got this. I'm going to feel good after. That is such a good way for you to get in control of your thoughts rather than them control you. So it's a really acute lesson. Breathing, the singing, humming, anything that vibrates in here is your nervous system really likes that. In terms of supplements, there's like omega fatty acids, that fat that we need, really soothing for the nervous system, probiotics to settle the stomach that's been upset. You know, it's interesting. I have learned through my experiences that and trainings that I think it's like it only takes 40 hours or something after the brain has been injured that the stomach is out of balance as well because we are this system and we need to get it back in balance. Exercise, anything soothing to the system. Laughing, find something to make yourself laugh every day. This is the one that is for free out there right now on Amazon. If you were to look for people who may or know someone that has this, they can get the Audible version of it for free right now. If you want to look at concrete exercises for supporting your nervous system. And yeah, that is my presentation on EMDR. And so if anyone has any questions, I am happy to answer those.